Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our Sustainable Activism Webinar today. We're featuring animal communicator Joan Ranquet, and I'll introduce her momentarily. You can probably see her if you're online with us. And my name is Lisa Levinson, and I'm the Director of In Defense of Animals Sustainable Activism Campaign. And our goal is to provide emotional and spiritual resources for animal activists. So this is part of that program. We also have an animal activist online support group, which is going to meet on the last Thursday of the month. It's actually the fourth Thursday of the month. And that's an opportunity for animal activists to share issues that they face in their life and to receive peer support. In addition, we have an animal activist support line, which you can call, and the number is 1-800-705-0425, and that number will connect you with a counselor, and you'll receive free counseling to assist you with issues you're dealing with in life or trying to navigate a new campaign if you're an animal activist or anything you're working on. We really want to help people so that we can continue to help the animals. So again, thank you very, very much for joining us. And if you're interested, we do have a vegan spirituality online gathering that happens next week, and that will feature Thomas Jackson. He's a filmmaker who's working on something called the Compassion Project. So we'll hear more about that next week. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring up the bio for Joan. I'm so excited to have her here. And you may have been with us for the webinar we had previously, our Sustainable Activism Webinar with Lauren Mon, who was actually a student of Joan Ranquet. So this is really an honor to have Joan with us. So Joan is an animal communicator and author of Communication with All Life, Revelations of an Animal Communicator. She's the founder of Communication with All Life University. Through private sessions, workshops, teleseminars, and speaking events, Joan facilitates a deepening of the human-animal connection. Joan was chosen by MSN as one of the top 25 people who do what they love. For Healing CD, Animal Alchemy, Energy Work for Animals and Their Humans, and her book, Animal Communication 101, The Animal Communicator's Journey, were published in 2012. Her newest book, Energy Healing for Animals, A Hands-On Guide for Enhancing the Health, Longevity, and Happiness of the Animals We Love, was released in November of 2015. So it's a true delight to have you here with us today, Joan.
Thank you. And it's hard. Yeah, and I think what you guys are doing is amazing. So it's I'm really honored to be able to present to you guys, because I think what you guys already are doing is so great and necessary in the world. So thank you for having me.
Oh, really? It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So I just also want to introduce that I've got my little friend here, Buster Keaton, wanted to say hi to everybody. He assists me on a lot of my work. So anyway, he's always next to me when I'm working.
That's great. Well, we'll be thinking of Buster. I'm so glad that he could join us. And I'd like to extend also gratitude to everyone out here, whether you're on the phone or on the computer or your smartphone. We're so grateful to all of you for joining us, because that's why we're here, is to build this community and support each other. So I want to let you know that I'll be handling some of the tech issues in the call. We do have a little chat box. If you're online, feel free to communicate with each other and with us via the chat box, and I will be checking that. And also, later on in the call, we'll have an opportunity to answer questions. So the beginning part will be more of a listening webinar, and Joan's going to take it away in a moment, and she'll be showing us a PowerPoint. And I will actually send out all of these materials. Everything she shares today will come to everyone, along with the replay link of this event, and you'll all get that by email. So if you registered for the event, then you will definitely get that information. If you're online, there's a link to the PowerPoint, which you can view either that way, or you can kind of walk along with us, because we'll be showing the PowerPoint along with our images here on the webinar. So again, thank you so much, Joan. This is really exciting. I think we'll go ahead and bring on the PowerPoint so that you can begin your talk.
Okay.
Great. So I'm getting the slides together here for you. And they're just loading up, so there'll be just a moment.
Okay. I see them.
Great.
Do you see them?
Yes, I do. And feel free to check in with me anytime if you're wondering what's happening, and I'll do the same with you. So for everyone who's on the computer, I'm going to let Joan take it away. So I'll pop off, and I'll join back again when we do the question.
All
Thanks,
right.
Joan.
And so thank you. And I just have to say that I know there's a glare on my glasses, so I'm going to minimize my blind activity here. So overcoming poor baby syndrome to be more effective activists. This is, I'll go a little bit into what I do in a few minutes, but this is one of my favorite topics, and so I want to also thank Lauren Mon for connecting me with In Defense of Animals, because she knows this is one of my favorite subjects, and I think that when we start to really look at all of this, we have more of a chance of being more effective. So I will just jump right into the presentation. So what we will review today, here I have to have my glasses, challenges we face on the planet right now and what it means to us individually, what the poor baby syndrome is and what does that mean, why I know a little bit about this, who I am, what animal emotions are like versus human, how animals get trapped into the human emotional cycle and how this isn't helping, studies on the effects of emotions, talk about the effect of a crowd, pack, and what can we do to take care of ourselves so we don't hit compassion fatigue, and looking at powerful images that are positive and how that makes us feel. So I don't know, it was just a guess that it's probably more women than men, but I know that I love this picture and this image of Alice in Wonderland because I like to think that somewhere in our world that's who we are. And I think as little children we were that Alice in Wonderland. And one of the things that kept us with our innocence was our love and connection for animals. And somewhere we may have been wounded, and a lot of us got through our wounding or our challenges, or maybe we didn't have any of that. Maybe we just loved animals. And so many of us that are on this call, and I'm using Alice in Wonderland, but we can also say Alex in Wonderland if you'd like, so that we can not be gender specific. But it is in that pure innocent form that we really identify and love animals. And so some of the challenges we're facing on the planet right now and what it means to us individually, like I said, this is something we're going to cover, is animals, people, and the planet are definitely in peril right now in a way that is unprecedented as far as we know. And, we are empathic. So as empathic beings, we can't help but to really be affected by this. And we're drawn to animals. So we might be more inclined to be that person that's, like something like Katrina, we're going to go sign up for the animal team versus the Red Cross. There is a certain part of us that identifies more with animals than with people, and I really think of that as way back down to our core. Like I think of our identification with animals as a core piece of us that we wish was still as innocent as what we see with the animals. And somewhere, so then because of this, and we know that the planet is in peril, I think there's some things that we have to ask ourselves and kind of be asking ourselves regularly, is there an unhealed part of ourselves, a little piece that's still a victim? Is there a small piece of us that is still enamored by the magical kingdom of, say, that Alice in Wonderland, and we can't take seeing that that pure part of the magical kingdom we want to see being sullied and ruined because everything is in peril. And how much of these little bits and pieces have we healed in our own life? And then we're going to really kind of go through why we would need to. And the main reason I think of, aside from our own personal karma and trajectory, is that so that we can go on and create change with balance, compassion, and be emotional leaders. And so I found it fascinating that the first definition here of empathy is actually projection. And so the imaginative projection of a subjective state into an object, so the object appears to be infused with it. And of course, we know this other definition of empathy, and that's something that we usually think of like, oh, I'm super empathic and I pick up on other people and animals' feelings and what have you. But let's look at our friend Alice here, who is probably a little piece of ourselves. In this picture, I think of Alice here, at this little tea party. She looks like she's being kind of cornered, and as she's being cornered, she might be the victim. But look what she's also projecting out as this victim. And so there's, this goes back to that definition of empathy, that there is a lot of projection also with empathy. So that's just something I want you to think in the back of your mind a little bit about. And so, again, the full definition of empathy, that first piece is the imaginative projection of a subjective state into an object so that the object appears infused with it. Now, I went ahead and got the definition of projection here, and there's some, forecast, prediction, prognosis, but also going back to this last slide, the unconscious, the third one down, the unconscious transfer of one's own desires or emotions to another person, and I would add to an animal. And so I want you to look at this picture, and this, of course, is from the Sarah McLachlan ASPCA ad that was very effective. I mean, so effective that I can't even, personally, I can't hear some of her music because I'm already going to start weeping because there's dogs in crates. Or, it brings up such emotion for me from some of that early campaigning that I can't, there's a point where I shut down. And so this is a lot of how images that we've been projecting onto our world of activism, and even, I have a program for people that are becoming animal communicators or energy healings. A lot of times this imagery is, it brings up a lot of emotion. And if anybody would like to type in what, I would love to see if you have any reaction here to this picture, because I just want to see if anybody's willing to type in, okay, or maybe Lisa, sadness, very good, heartbreaking, right? Yeah.
Yes, we're getting people. There's a little lag, just to let you know. So we'll definitely see people. And also, for those people who are on the phone, we'll try to describe the images in a basic way so you can understand them. There's a dog in this image. Yeah.
And it was from the original the SPCA. I called it the wrong thing. Commercial probably in the 90s, I think, but maybe it was early 2000s. Okay, Gretchen, in case one of my students, having been well trained by you, it ticks me off because it's shortchanging the brave dog. There we go. And Sarah McLachlan is practically, that's, yeah. So, and then here's another picture. I would love to get your, what your take on this here, and heavy energy, confusion, Yeah, really great. So I would love to get your take on this picture now.
So the picture now is of a cat that's in a crate. It has ears up, kind of pointed.
And everybody has stopped. Okay, it looks like my Charlie, he's from the Humane Society. We couldn't bring him home right away, and the waiting was killing me seeing him like that. Okay, that's interesting. So again, it brings up that emotion. The cat looks upset. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that, okay, Gretchen. Okay, I'm stuck in this cage, so I'll make it my kingdom. All right, so this was a trick because actually what's funny is I had a friend over and I was showing him the PowerPoint that I was starting to do, and he said, I showed the Sarah McLachlan picture, and so I'm going to give my friend credit. He actually said, you should take a picture of one of your own cats or dogs in the crate. And by chance, I walk in, and so I've just moved from Seattle down to the San Diego area, confinement. Okay, so all my cats moved in this crate for 18 hours. They were in a car ride, and we broke it up with motels and what have you. But that's now her safe spot. And so I happened to walk into the other room and find her sleeping in there. And, of course, that's Queen Latifah, and she loves her picture taken, whether her eyes are open or not. But it's funny what we project onto that, right? Because when we see an image, it brings up all the old emotions that we think of when we see, I am the queen. And someone wrote, that's why I felt leave me alone. Yeah, you're getting who Queen Latifah is, exactly. So she's actually very affectionate with me, but she is definitely the queen. And so I wanted to put those pictures in contrast. And so, again, for the people on the call, I'm going to sneak back to the picture from the ad. So for all we know, with the Sarah McLachlan ad with this dog in the crate looking sadly up, it was somebody's dog that, it probably was a real commercial for the SPCA. But my point is, we don't know. And so a lot of times we're using a lot of this imagery that is misleading, but we're getting people to react in a certain way. And I would love to see what else people wrote. Give me back my nip, dude. And you can tell, she does get a lot of security from the crate. And it's funny, she was never a crate cat before, but after driving down here, and we had, we've actually, in all honesty, we got down here, and at that point, the oldest dog was crossing, and she did get a lot of security from that crate. And that is kind of the opposite projection that a lot of these pictures. Well, it's not what you think, right? So I just wanted to really bring that up. And it brings up what I call the poor baby syndrome. So what does that mean? And I'll talk a little bit about projection here and why I know about this. So I call this the poor baby syndrome. I actually call it the legendary Diane Garwood poor baby syndrome. And it stems back from, I've been teaching animal communication since about 1998, and I've been teaching energy healing that long also for animals. And in my courses, people come and, at an advanced stage, or not that advanced, probably within the first day, people are exchanging pictures of each other's animals and doing readings. And every time somebody would hand Diane, who has gone through my program and has since learned, every time somebody handed Diane a picture of the animal, and they'd say, she's only got 3 legs because she had cancer, Diane would go, oh, poor baby. And, maybe that dog was fine. Maybe that dog was glad she, was running around on 3 legs, and it didn't matter. It was an immediate assumption. And so I watched, how many people, after teaching animal communication for so long, and this was probably almost 10 years ago. So at that point, I've been teaching about 8 years. And I started charging her. I charged her $10 for Poor Baby, and I charged her $5 for Bless His Little Heart. And I started charging everybody that came into my workshops that, we'd put the money in the center, and we'd pick early on I gave everybody the ground rules. Like, we're not going to project our emotions onto these animals, especially when we're doing readings, because we're trying to have zero filter. And I think with activism it's very similar. So anyway, we'd always pick a rescue or a shelter that we all agreed upon. When I was teaching in Seattle, inevitably somebody was in the room would have been working for Microsoft, so we were able to match funds. And so all the money at the end of the weekend workshop was donated if anybody blew it and said, poor baby, or bless his little heart about, some animal that we were trying to empower. So it really got the point across. And I think that we tend to do that a lot with, again, going back to the image of the dog in that ad that's looking up woefully, and my cat asleep in that crate. Both of those images, it's easy for us to go to poor baby syndrome. And I'm not saying that there aren't times that sometimes naturally our heart does go out. Of course our heart goes out. That's why we're all here. But, if we aren't managing it a little better, then we hit compassion fatigue. And I'll go a little more into that here and why I know about this subject. So I have been an animal communicator and an energy healer for a long time. And my first book that came out with Hay House is called Communication with All Life, Revelations of an Animal Communicator. And then I recently had a book come out, the book on the right, Energy Healing for Animals. And that just came out in November, and that's published by Sounds True. And in there I talk a lot about emotions and leadership and all of that, and what happens with our emotions and our ability in our household. I go into great detail, well, in the first book and the second book, with how much our emotions affect our animal companions. And on a greater scene, me as an animal communicator, you guys as activists, how much, and when we start creating a following around us to get people going, we have to stay as, not neutral, obviously we're going to be compassionate, but we must find ways to really be able to handle that. And again, I've been an animal communicator for a long time, so I've watched the effect of emotions in people's households, and I've watched the effect of people who have projected onto a situation, oh, I got him, I rescued him, and he's such a poor little baby, and now he's pooping on the desk, So I've watched the result, and if we don't harness that on some level, a lot of times what we're doing ends up backfiring. And so in my program, Communication with All Life University, I talk about this a lot, and I'm helping people really understand how we need to take emotional leadership, again, in our own homes and with the activities, whether we're working professionally, even equine massage therapists, all the way to activists leading great things like you guys do. And so I want to talk a little bit about the emotional world here. And I can never say his name, Dr. Panksepp, I don't know. Anyway, he's from Washington State University. And this is a little thing from my book that I talk about. I quote him and a few other people because I'm not, it's going to look like I'm saying that there aren't the same emotions, and I'm going to say there aren't the same emotions. That's not what I meant to say. But what I want to say is that humans are more capable of having multiple emotions, like fear leads to confusion, and this, that, and the other thing, whereas animals are much more in a very present moment. And I like to say this, like, let's say, for the most part, except for with the exception of some animals that maybe get trapped in an emotional challenge where, they need training or behavioral shifts. If you look at a human, I can think about something stupid I did at a party in college and turn red, right? Like, my memory has the ability to produce complexity with regard to the emotion, whereas animals, yes, it does occur, but not as much because they're so much more present. And I want to just, kind of go over this list, which is big enough, thankfully, that I can see. Seeking, fear, lust, play, rage, panic, care, grief. And then also Dr. Marc Bekoff, who's done a lot of work following emotions also of animals. He talks about regret, longing, and jealousy. And he also talks about their ability to experience cooperation. And we see this like with the whales hunt together, or, what elephants all do together. Wolves hunt together. Coyotes work together. My dog and cat can get together and get the garbage out if I don't take care of everything. So they are cooperative. And then I would add, I really believe that they do love us and we and each other, and there is love. I believe that there is devotion. I've seen animals be embarrassed, and I know that they experience anxiety. And also, they're able to experience trust and function in long-term relationships, and as well as experience PTSD and OCD. And if you've ever lived with a border collie, you know what I'm talking about. So anyway, and so I really bring this up not to simplify at all, but to show what a difference it is, and why we have to be really responsible with what we are thinking and feeling about them. So Wild Justice by Dr. Marc Bekoff is a concept that is, I love this concept, and it's when he, and I want you to notice, so in the picture here, for those on the phone, there are two wolves in each picture. There's two images, and in one image, there's a darker wolf chasing a white wolf, and then in the second image, there's the dark wolf is submitting to, in a playful way, to the lighter wolf. And the reason I love this concept of wild justice is Dr. Marc Bekoff talks a lot about how if let's say two animals are playing, and they're just going at it, and it's so much fun, and they're playing, and oops, by accident, ow, my ear, ow, and then, oof, stop it, and it gets a little bordering aggressive, and so because of that aggression, it could go a certain way, and maybe one of them stops, and it's like they each go their own way, and they're off doing their own thing, and about 4 minutes later, it's like, hey, you want to play? Yeah, you want to play? Yeah. And suddenly they're doing that growly fun thing that wolves and dogs and coyotes and even kitties do. So wild justice, it's like they don't hang on to it. They aren't holding on to like, you bit my ear at 4:30 on Friday, right? It's, we're playing. And first of all, we can learn a lot from that. But secondly, it just shows us, what could be possible if we were to really just look at our emotions and let them, be there, be present with them, and then let them, allow them to be like ocean waves coming and going. So again, I want to go back to that very long list of human emotions and a short list of animal emotions. I'm not taking away from their emotional system at all. In fact, they are far more connected by their emotion, and that's kind of part of their superpowers. Like I would say one of our superpowers is logic, and it's a great thing. It makes us look both ways before we cross the street. It makes us, follow directions, getting to the theater. It helps us manage certain things. But they are managing through an emotional system. And Rupert Sheldrake is a biologist out of England, and he wrote a book called Dogs Know When Their Owner's Coming Home, or something that simple. And in the book, he talks about how he set up all these cameras. He's from London, and he set up all these cameras, time-stamped cameras, in people's homes, and then had their human and watching the dogs, or the camera was maybe faced at the door or wherever the person came home and would discover their dog or cat when they came home from work. And what they did was they had, instead of having the people leave work at like 4:30 when they did every day and caught the 4:35 bus or tube, they had people leaving at random times and watched what the dogs in the homes did. And all of the dogs, and he even has a cat story or two, but all of the dogs would get up, like literally, oh, look, the person is leaving at 3:53, and at 3:53 in the time-stamped camera, it shows that the dog got up and sat by the door and waited that hour for the person to come home. So we have an unbelievable web connection that we don't necessarily see or participate in the way that they do. So their emotions are profound in a way that I wish we were still connected to. But it isn't the same as ours. And so they are, they're very, very, very connected that way. And another thing about their emotions, and I'm going to read this. So for the people on the phone, I've got a picture of a duck here on a pond. And this is a little section from my new book, Energy Healing for Animals. And it's a section called Animals Get Trapped into the Human Emotional Cycle and How This Isn't Helping. And it's from this little excerpt. So everyone, including animals, responds to stress differently at different times. If you're seeing anxiety, aggression, fear, depression, or grief in your animal, it's a sure sign it's living with some serious stress and is in high fight or flight mode. Now, a duck that faces stress, say the sudden appearance of a bobcat at the edge of a pond, can fly off. Animals in our homes or barns can't do that. They trust us to take care of them. Without the option of just taking off, they can experience stress in ways that are similar to how we respond to chronic stress, setting a mental loop of whatever stresses us on endless replay. The trick is to interrupt that loop. So interrupting that loop is then what I go into talk about with regard to energy healing or body work or things like that. Or, I break down more in the book. But going back to that duck in the pond, why is that so significant? That duck in the pond can see its predator and have a moment, like, uh-oh. It can have fear, it can have adrenaline, and then the moment that duck strikes, like, I'm going to get out of here, and starts to fly off, all of that adrenaline starts to fly off. All of that, literally animals have also a brilliant ability to shake it off. That duck could go land in the ponds next door, find his friends, and it's as if nothing happened. But he has that time of movement to express and expel that emotion, whereas our animals in homes can't. The whales at SeaWorld can't. They're stuck there, and then we're projecting all this stuff, and they don't have the opportunity to release in the same way that animals in the wild do, to release their emotions. So, and I want to talk a little bit then about what our responsibility in this is, because is there a difference between a herd, pack, or a crowd? And scientists have watched animal flocks and herds to understand mob mentality or herd behavior. It is believed that aggression occurs in a crowd because personal responsibility is diminished. That alone right there is amazing. We're starting to see this in some of the political moments these days. People don't want to be left behind when a certain trend is up and coming. So that's another reason we have to really take emotional responsibility and leadership with people, because some people may be joining us on this just because they don't want to be left behind. And when we look at packs of dogs, we see this where, packs of dogs will jump in the same way that that a mob will like, take him down. So it's that mob, that pack mob mentality. And this is key. All of us that work with animals know this in 2 seconds, that feelings like excitement can turn to nervousness, can turn to aggression within a minute. So a lot of those feelings, and we know this with animals, is a very slippery slope. And animals with, so again, if we're thinking that we're trying to make some waves and get something done with something, we've got to be really responsible for what we're bringing along with us. And all species, human included, are not immune to that unless all of the individuals are creating a conscious choice about their involvement, i.e. emotional leadership. And then that's when it goes back to that picture of Alice in Wonderland at that little tea party. The activist becomes the bully, and the message gets lost. It's like she was looking like a victim in that picture, but she also was looking kind of a little bossy. When the emotion is high, the intellect is low, and people don't make good decisions. And it is emotionally exhausting for the messenger, for sure. And that's when we get compassion fatigue. And that's when all of everything that we're trying to do gets lost. And here we have our little Alice in Wonderland again in a house of cards. All the cards are coming at her. And without some sort of leadership, even if it is a very quiet part of the self, the entire world would feel like chaos. And so that's where it's like if we look at the animal superpowers of they're able to connect up with themselves and each other, but they run on their instinct. We've got to be able to trust ourselves, even in this world of chaos. And if we don't have that safe spot within ourselves, we would continually feel victimized by the stories we'd hear about animals. And we would eventually shut down because the overwhelm would take over. And by being the messenger on behalf of animals, we want to make sure that we're not shutting down people around us, because we need people. Ironically, those of us that tend to like animals a little more, we need people, because that's the only way this is going to happen to really make long-term change for the animals. And so I talk about this in my book, and I talk about it a lot with my students, is that we want to take on emotional leadership. And that is an empathic caring on behalf of our beloved planet Earth, and empathetic caring for a multi-species world. We humans have to be emotional leaders, using our logic as a compassionate superpower, meeting other species' innate superpowers where they are, and combining all our emotions and energies to create and maintain harmony. And anyway, I go on in the book about, what happens when it's misdirected, but I really want to stay on the theme here of keeping it open and light. And so some of the things to avoid compassion fatigue are, again, going back to that original wounding that we may have that put us in the animal kingdom to begin with. I mean, I think naturally, whether I've been wounded or not, I was going to crawl around and eat dog food. But some people that we know that we're working with on behalf of animals may have had some sort of wounding that brought them to this. As a matter of fact, there's, now I've forgotten his name, but there's a scientist, I think, in New Mexico, and he wrote a book called Borderland, and his whole theory on the book is that most people that work with animals have had some sort of wounding, and it's not borderline personality. He calls us borderland, and that we've come back to heal ourselves through working with animals, but that we should never forget that part of healing ourselves. And so, again, having a healthy understanding of why we are wanting to help. Is it an altruistic thing, or is it some thing that's being triggered that we're a script we don't even know that's running us? And then learning to have good boundaries so that we don't feel taken advantage of when helping. Now, this is a huge thing to avoid compassion fatigue, because we go into something raw, and then we're like, everybody's an idiot. So, and I'm sure that that's, things like that happen a lot I've seen a lot in rescues, and part of it is because, again, going back to the first one, if we're having a healthy understanding of why we're going into it, and we're really going into it for the animals, then we're not so driven by our own agenda, and that's a really important thing. So having, understanding why we're here to help is part of really good boundaries. And the other reason that I say that about boundaries is, I work so much with students who want to, be animal communicators or energy healers. And so by being empathic, we could be taking on all the animal stuff. We could be taking on all the people stuff. So having really good boundaries and self-care is huge. We want to be creating a clear baseline for our own emotional life, knowing that anger fuels change, which can be great, but tools not to stay in that anger. And I'm one of those people, I don't think anger is negative. And I don't think that emotions are negative. I think anger is fantastic. If we didn't get mad, there wouldn't be change. But knowing how to be with kind of heal or heal thyself, right? Like being able to manage our own anger and being able to really be okay with it and have tools to move in and out of it. Again, thinking of our emotions like ocean waves or like that wild justice that the wolves do. And part of that is, again, if we are so angry all the time about factory farming and we're putting up angry messages every single day, we're kind of fire hosing and people around us will shut down and we're going to hit burnout. Then we're going to be needing to eat all these leafy greens because our adrenals will be shot. It's endless. If we stay in that anger all the time, that is not sustainable. And not staying stuck in the story of the animals that keep them in a poor baby position, knowing that that story isn't helping the animals. So, if we can, I'm going to give a really good example. I just saw this little documentary down at the San Diego Museum on this reef, and it's a great little story. So if you're ever near San Diego, it's a moving exhibit. It was, on whales and what have you. And the reef has been the source of great, I want to say hunting, but, people had used all the fish, had fished it, overfished it. And the same family, this is down in Mexico, the same guy, his kids had seen, that at one point this is this beautiful world. If you look through a scuba, snorkel mask, if you were looking through a mask, how beautiful and almost like a kaleidoscope, how magical and beautiful and colorful this reef was. And that then that reef went completely dead. And then in time, that people took effort and made that reef come back alive. And now that reef is a place where divers go and just observe and look at the beautiful fish and wildlife. So if everybody in that town had gotten stuck in that story about that reef is dead and we've got to move on, there wouldn't have been any life to that reef. But instead, those people took action. And I'm using that as an example because I just think that, and again, we really have to find the hope in these situations. And so, anyway, surrounding yourself with like-minded people with hopeful outlooks is another great way to avoid compassion fatigue. If everybody is, woe is me about that reef, and one person is saying, hey, you know what, we could bring some more fish to the area or something, that's who I'm going to go hang out with. Don't spend a lot of time, if any, with damaging images. Really treat your psyche like it can only take in the good. And I know that certain advertising, so to speak, for certain rescues has had a lot of success with damaging pictures. And I know there are times when we have to see damaging pictures, but there is a certain point where I know for me, my psyche can only take so much. And when Facebook first came out, my first book had just come out in 2007 or 2008, I joined. And so all these rescues were liking me and, finding me, and we were friends. And at night, I called it rescue porn. And I understand that it's like a desperate situation, but I would go to bed with all these pictures of this pit bull that was going to be euthanized. And it's like I couldn't take it anymore. And again, I think that there's a certain point where sometimes we have to use images, but if we can really be minimal with that and then look at really pretty pictures a lot afterwards or something, just find a way to take care of your psyche. And then having some solid practices and tools of self-care. This is huge because, you guys are in the first line of fire out there. So anyway, some tools with self-care, healthy diet, obviously, exercise, meditation, and all of the people on here that have studied with me at all, any of my students know that I just can't say enough about meditation. EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, that's a technique of tapping, and I made a video. I wasn't able to upload it, but I'm hoping that when this link goes out, that Lisa can also include the video that I made. It will be up on YouTube somehow. I don't know why it didn't upload. But I made a tapping video because the EFT tapping helps to bring down the emotions. It lightens the triggers, so to speak. So I did a little video for you guys on compassion fatigue. But that's a really good technique. Obviously, if you have good energy healers around you or you do energy healing on animals, maybe it's time to do it on yourself or find a friend to trade with. I think somatic experiencing therapy is really powerful. Massage, facials, pedicures. I mean, it's like for as much as you get out there and are critical to the outcome of so many animals, we have to take care of the self as well. And I want to also, it has been important to use some of these images in the past that are damaging to the psyche, but also I feel like there's a movement of new things, and I've got a few images here. So I have the In Defense of Animals website, the landing page or whatever we call it. That's my fabulous technical term here, and I love the site because it's I think this is a really good illustration of, there's enough to kind of pique the imagination. We are drawn to that cute pig, and we want to help that cute pig. That's a cute pig. For me, it goes a lot further than the horrible images. And if we can start honoring the more positive messaging, like attracts like, who then are we going to be drawing to us, to magnetizing to us to help get the messaging out there? So I'm going to just, cute. I'm not, anyone that knows me, like, I don't do an overabundance of cute, but that's cute. Domestic animals, shifting the messaging to promote adoption and not rescue. Like, I think those are, promoting adoption is a different feeling, again, going back to what we feel when we see something, than helping rescues. So, and I love that picture. I've become an Instagram stalker of this woman. I love, her name is Sophie Gammon, and I actually, I just follow her on Instagram. She's got 1 million followers, but, I let her know that I was using this in some of her pictures in a PowerPoint, and she really loved that. So here's that. I mean, again, I love seeing animals in natural settings, but that is pretty stinking cute. And it's about, and I love that the pit bull flower power, right? Like, so flowers have a sense of softness, and it's softening the imagery that has been out there about pit bulls. And again, so, and I have to be reminded of telling the people on the phone what the image is here on the slide. So in this slide, there are two people sitting eating pasta, and then to the right of them are two horses eating hay. And one of my graduates in my program has a rescue called Rodeo City Equine Rescue, and every year they do a spaghetti dinner, and this was an invitation to their spaghetti dinner fundraiser, and it also illustrated how much they eat spaghetti and how much horses eat. And so it was a really fun way, and it was shot in black and white with little sort of, old movie music, and it was a very fun, demonstration of how much horses eat and how much help they need. And cute definitely sells, and I have a lot of cats. I have a few dogs, and now I'm just down to two. And I'm a horse person as well. I've got two horses. And I love this one on the left. This is a picture of a guy kissing a cat. And so it's not a kitten, but it's a really sweet picture. Who wouldn't want to go adopt that cat? And who doesn't love a guy that loves cats? So that is awesome imagery. And, of course, the picture to the right is a kitten doing yoga, which is so cute. And I think these images are really responsible for the dog meat trade. And I have to tell you, these are not horrific graphic images. I can't even wrap my brain around the whole dog meat industry. So to look at pictures I'd have to be doing a lot of EFT tapping. So I was glad to find some images that at least are like, hey, people are, this image is this woman, it looks like, she's going out there and helping that. So it's a more empowered picture for the dog. And anytime we have a story, that the stories hold great power for us and for shifting things for animals. Stories help people make sense of things. People attach their own meaning to it. Stories can change the hearts and brains of humans. A great story and great data used together moves audiences both emotionally and intellectually. We are hardwired to respond to story. Obviously, that's how Hollywood exists and the publishing industry. And we can reprogram our DNA through stories and language. And so this one, if I can get through this without welling up, dog rescued from Michael Vick's fighting ring is a kissing machine. So this dog, apparently there's a movie out called The Champions, which is about the Michael Vick dogs. And that, again, is one of those things that just can send me out into another stratosphere. But I love that they took Michael Vick's name and made it the Victory Dogs. So, and this picture, for those on the phone, is one of the champions, this little delicious pit bull licking a cat. So, again, that's a powerful image, and that I want to see this film. Blackfish, again, if I can get through this without welling up, that'll be awesome. The story of Tilikum, the power of a documentary. So I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and I just left there, and I've come and gone several times as an adult. Haven't really lived there more than 8 years at a time as an adult, but I am so in love with the orca whales. That was actually one of the things that almost made me stay when I thought about moving. And so this film Blackfish, right, it was so powerful, and it's so powerful that it's going to change things. And SeaWorld is losing money, right? And then they just had Joel Manby came to the decision about no more breeding in captivity and a few other things. And some of the things, I know we want him to go further, but I want to offer to you, what if we actually were really grateful for this decision and held a vision that it becomes, that he makes even better decisions from here on out. There's a story, and it could be a wives' tale, and I know I'm running out of time, so I'm going to do it really quickly. There's a story, it could be a wives' tale or an urban legend, but it is a story of this nun or someone who was walking across the country for peace, and she was, I don't know if she was hitchhiking or what, but she was picked up by a guy, and she sensed for a moment that he was going to do something really horrible. And she just looked at him and she said, "Oh, I am so exhausted, and I am so grateful you picked me up, and I feel so safe with you." And she took a nap. Well, the guy was going to do something really horrible, and he ended up becoming her bodyguard as she went on to do great things. And it's a really famous story, and I've tried to look it up on the internet. I forget the story, but anyway, my point is that when we hold a vision for someone other than that which they were going to do, a lot of times this is positive projecting. But, I mean, if we were really, truly in a place of gratitude with the decisions, even if it's only one decision at a time that people are starting to make on behalf of compassion, we could really start to shift things. And then, you know, Esther the pig, she's going to change factory farming. I really believe it, because she's putting a face on it, but a really cute face on it. And so now she's got a book coming out, which I can't wait to read. And I just wanted to, I'll try to quickly go through these. The Sheldrick Trust has, I think, some of the best PR on the planet. If you look closely in this picture, there's a bunch of images of baby elephants and their caretakers. And these baby elephants are babies, so therefore they're completely recent orphans. And yet, we're all, you know, we want to know about this orphanage. We want to know everything about it. And even though it's tragic that they lost their mother, we are in awe. And they do a lot of really beautiful, positive messaging. So much so that presidents are showing up there, like Obama went there. John Kerry's gone there. There have been a number of people that just go there and are really bringing to light, because of this work, really bringing to light, trying to get help for the anti-poaching, which is another one of the things that sends me over the edge. So, and then we've got Jane Goodall, who is just on a rampage, getting out there with great stories. And I honestly believe that Jane Goodall is Alice in Wonderland grown up, and that in many ways that's who we want to be. And I think all of us relate to both the Alice in Wonderland, that it is a great wonderland, and then the compassion and sincerity that Jane Goodall has brought to the world. So anyway, that is my presentation, and I want to thank you so much for letting me talk. And so I made it right in it. 5:59.
Perfect timing. That's awesome. And I love how you coordinated all of the imagery with what you were saying, and they're such great examples of the concepts that you're trying to share with us tonight.
Yeah, I told you when we chatted about a week or so ago, I really want to do, I want to keep writing books, but I also want to get into documentaries. And putting this together forced me to really put all the things that I've been thinking about that I outline, like, okay, I'm going to put it together, and here it is. So thank you.
Wow. Well, we're very fortunate to be able to see this and to experience it as you're just gathering all those thoughts together. So I know it's about 6 o'clock, or it might be about 9 o'clock, depending on where you're located. And I wanted to thank everyone for joining us tonight, and especially thank Joan, because it was such a treat to really hear your perspective. And we will stay on for a few questions if you'd like, for maybe a few more minutes. And then, but I really encourage everyone to join us for all of our future Sustainable Activism webinars. We have one coming up. Our next one in May is with a lady named Anita Krajnik, and she is from Toronto Pig Safe, and she's going to share about how Tolstoy inspired her work and some other things that she's doing as an activist. So we've got lots of good things coming up, and I hope you'll join us on our calls. So if anyone has any questions, I'm going to switch the presentation mode. We'll take down the slides for now, and then we'll switch to a Q&A mode, which means that you can either press *6 on your phone to ask Joan a question, or you can put them into the chat box, and either is fine with us. And what we'll do is we'll work to address the questions. So hold on one second while we change you'll hear a little recording while we change the webinar to more of a Q&A.
All attendees are muted and may unmute themselves by pressing *6.
So if you're on the phone, the *6 will work, and if you're on the computer, you can press the little microphone icon next to your name, and then that will allow you to speak with us. You can use your mic or use a headset any way you'd like, and other than that, we do have the chat box as well. So,
yeah, and Lauren actually said she can't unmute, but wanted to share a personal example of shifting an animal story. A shelter dog who surprised me by being so excited to be there because it was, I went too far, hold on. Because she was going to find her people. That's awesome. She was adopted the next day. Okay, I'm going to bring tears to my eyes. Really brought home to me that the stories we tell about them can empower and disempower, or disempower them on an energetic level, and that they don't necessarily live into the same stories we're projecting on them. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Lauren.
Hey, hello?
Yes. Please share your name with us.
This is Cheryl Travers. I'm sorry, I'm on a smartphone, so I didn't get to see your images. I'm sure it was amazing. This is a great talk. I really needed it. I mean, I need all these talks, but this one for sure, because I really resonate with this. And what I wanted to communicate was that, this, just two things. The aspect of calling it factory farming. I mean, the only reason why I'm saying it is because I've had, so much experience in the local food movement, and it wasn't until my best friend that I took care of, a pig, was slaughtered, and that, no, I'm not saying that with any great pride, but, those not factory farmed animals are the same. And I also noticed that this aspect of quote unquote male animals are just, it's such an interesting aspect that goes on in the world around males, be it the rooster or the boar or the bull or the, ram, the buck. And I'm sharing that around the animals that are farmed just to see what you think about that, because I just find that to be so interesting how people not that are animal activists or caring animal people always seem to have an opinion about them.
An opinion in an overtly male way?
Yeah. I mean, not that I hang on that, but I've just noticed it in the whole cattleman thing, and just it's just kind of a conversation that people have about quote unquote male animals. And I don't think it's so much in the world of dogs and cats and horses, maybe stallions, but just curious about, your viewpoint around that, because it's a pretty strong thing around the farmed animals, that bull is really dangerous, you know what I mean? Or they're dangerous,
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, because I'll never forget one time this guy called for a session, and I do phone sessions, so people send me pictures of their animal, and I don't always know what my appointments are each day, and I haven't always looked at the picture until the time of the appointment. And I open the picture, and it's this bull, and the guy said that he's a bull rider, and that his own bull was having a bad day, and he didn't know what was wrong. So that even shocked me, like, okay, that's kind of interesting. And when I checked in with that bull and realized how tender he was, and actually how tender this bull rider guy was, that he wanted to check in with his bull, you know, I think that again, it's sort of like the picture that I showed. When you get the slides, there's the picture, and the film is called The Champions. Looking at that, like that male pit bull licking that kitten, we can really start to change the imagery around that. Actually, it's funny because the kitty that sits next to me, Buster Keaton, I call him Buster Keaton of Assisi, because he is completely like the St. Francis here on the farm. And it's not some female nurturing cat or dog here that's the real nurturer here with my animals, among my animals. It's actually this really cute guy. So I think it's a lot of a projection of the male energy. I mean, we can look at like a lot of South American cultures are still not neutering the male dogs, and you know, so we have this continued dogs in these places. So I feel like that's a projection that, you know, again, if we start looking at some of the more softer aspects of male energy and really being grateful for that.
Wow, that is such an interesting perspective. Really, thank you for sharing that, because that's like the whole like when you're on quote unquote you're on the farm, and like a regular like a quote unquote production farm, that's their whole job is to impregnate, you know, the females. And then when you look at them separately, I don't know, so it's just great to hear you just talk about it in perspective of male energy, and it's just like you have such lightness about it. If I could imbue and that today, for just today, what you're sharing, that is so beautiful. I so appreciate it. I really do.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Cheryl. We appreciate you speaking up too.
Yeah.
So,
it's a huge thing, because it's like I was getting really sad today because I thought about all these bucks that I used to see, and that they used to just stand there. That's all they did. Their whole job was to stand there until, you know, whatever winter time came, and then their job was to get the females pregnant. And how like people just spoke about that was like just like, you know, that's just what they do, and that it was just like that's their job. They're here. They stand there. They don't do anything but just get these females pregnant. And then it was like, you know, it's just like an accepted way of being in the world. Like, yeah, that's what they do. So, you know, that's okay. You know, they have a purpose, and they're to get females pregnant. So it's just part of this like unconscious energy that goes on around these male animals that I'm just, you know, noticing and want to figure out how to be able to relate to people, and as they talk about their backyard farming experiences and how fine it is to eat them or have them and all these things like that. So that's why I was bringing it up. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And we do have a couple of questions, it looks like, in the chat box too. And again, if anybody wants to chime in and ask a question by unmuting themselves, feel free to do so. So we have Daniela, I think, was sharing that a lot of puppies and kittens are in her area. They encourage people to have a litter before they're neutered, and that might be a little frustrating if you're trying to support animals. And then also, Christine was sharing that what if you've gotten to a point where you sadly can't help, but you hope that people are just a failed evolutionary experiment, and just how to. I think you can take it from there.
You know what? I think it's sort of like the last caller talking about how she wants to. Okay. So I think it's like the last caller trying to figure out how she can be in her community where farming is still going to go on in that way. It's like if we can be, I guess, somewhat gentle and kind about it with ourselves. It's like I know that it's easy to think that I like how you put this, that the Homo sapiens are just a failed evolutionary experiment. It might be, but I would like to think that one thing at a time, it can appear that we're on a path to self-destruction, but the light is always going to overcome darkness. And if I think about that Reese story that I just saw in that documentary down at the museum in San Diego is so profound, because in the pictures that they have, it was dead. And now it's like a thriving reef. And I think that is just, I always remember, I lived in LA for 12 years, and there's, everybody in LA knows about the whole, like, when the 405 and the 10 and the 101 and all the freeways cross, right? Like, there's so many freeways that cross in one spot. And in that area, there's a lot of foliage, right? There's a lot of stuff. There's also a lot of carbon monoxide that's just dumped right there onto it. And yet, these plants still thrive. So that's what I think about. I think that we are built to thrive. And when we can start using our superpower of logic for good, we're going to make thriving happen again in a better way. And I have to think that, right?
Yeah, well said. Thank you so much, Joan. I appreciate it. And it looks like we're having another question from someone named Elizabeth, and she's saying, what would be your advice for someone who used to be able to clearly communicate intuitively with animals, but lost the ability after a traumatic incident as a child, and how to lift this blockage?
Well, that is something that even whether you have a block or not, certainly in my program, I'm a real advocate of continuing to work on yourself. In fact, I just got invited to speak at the Edgar Cayce conference, Healer, Heal Thyself, because it's a big topic. And so I think what I would do is look at, if you can find somebody maybe that, well, the EFT, the Emotional Freedom Technique, could be something that could start to remove some of the trauma. I would be looking at maybe somatic therapy, experiencing therapy, whatever it's called, or even, soul retrieval work, so that you can just get that part of you back. It's almost like whatever part of you got lost in that trauma is still stuck in that place, and you want to bring yourself back to wholeness and know that the animals are just waiting to chat with you.
Yeah, that's very powerful what you shared, Joan, I think. And I was a movement therapist for many years, and I know that kind of embodied somatic work can really make a difference physically. And because we hold those memories in our body, and we can release them by letting out those emotions through different techniques. And so I think that's important. That might be a great avenue, is to try some of those. Almost, they're sometimes thought of as alternative healing, but doing somatic.
I believe they're normal.
Like the word. Yes. And doing work maybe even with a shamanic healer. They do work with imagery, and they do kind of like a guided meditation to help you. And hypnotherapy is another technique as well.
Yeah. That's a great question.
Wow. We've had a lot of fabulous questions and really engaged, lively dialogue in the chat box, and it's really a treat to have everybody with us this evening. We're probably getting close to the end of our call here, and it looks like one other gal was sharing, Andrea, that her animal companions took bullets for her and tried to teach her so many, many things about life and about other humans. And she has a hard time letting go of the guilt. And also that they had communicated back or come back in some way or another. So that might be something to address before we go, is just how do we manage the feelings of guilt, even with our own companion animals, things that possibly we could have or should have, all of those other words, things we could have done.
Well, I feel like, you know, I know that animals have their own karma and their own trajectory and their own journey and their own path and their own world, and that when they connect up with us, it's sort of like, you know, when we get married or are in a big relationship, like that spouse or other person is in on their journey but with us, and sometimes it's enmeshed and sometimes it's not, but that's part of the journey, and that's obviously part of their higher self choice. So I don't know that the animal necessarily took bullets for you, but had a teaching journey with you. And I also think that guilt is one of those things that leads to just, well, at least in households, it leads to the naughtiest of behaviors. So if you could have just an hour guilt-free zone, you're going to maybe have 2 hours tomorrow or 3 hours the next day. It's like that's an EFT, emotional freedom technique, or the somatic. All those things are really powerful to release the guilt, because I can assure you that no animal companion on the other side wants you to feel guilty.
Wow. Well, Joan, thank you so much. I'm going to take that to heart as a person who tends to feel those emotions, especially around the passing of my animal companions.
I know.
Those that I care about. So it's really important for us to care for ourselves by hearing and really taking in those sorts of comments that on the other side, that their guilt is not part of their vocabulary.
No. And they wouldn't want that for us.
Yeah. Gee, well, thank you so much. And thanks to everyone who stayed on with us a little after our time. And it's just a delight to have this opportunity to really interact with you. We love that. That's one of the best things about doing these webinars. Yeah, to just, because we are a community, and that's what we're here to do, is to support each other. So another huge thank you to Joan, and also to everyone who's on the call with us. And if you'd like to unmute yourself briefly before we end the call, we can go ahead and do a group goodbye. Sometimes we do that as kind of a fun way of really getting a sense of everybody who's with us tonight. So we hope you all have a wonderful evening. Yeah, you can see who's here.
Hi to everybody. Definitely. So
well, thanks to everyone for coming. And we will send out a replay link with all of the resources that Joan mentioned. So stay tuned for that. It might take me a little while, but I will get it out there. So again, thanks to everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Oh, good night, everyone.
Love.
Great to hear your voices. Good night, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks for all your work for the animals.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the work you guys are doing.
You.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night. Bye.
Good night.